I want to go across live and exclusive at this time to a top Indian diplomat who's been a High Commissioner to Pakistan and an ambassador in China, understands two of the most tricky neighbors that India has. Gautam Bambawale now joins us on this broadcast. Mr. Bambawale, welcome to India today. I want to start by asking you, Ambassador, about where you see the situation go diplomatically with China after the Galwan face-off. There was a very tricky, very agitated phone call between the Indian Foreign Minister and his Chinese counterpart, the Chinese side leveling all manner of absurd charges against India. We know what the military is doing, or that's been signaled by the Prime Minister. What role do the diplomats have in this current situation?
Thank you for that very interesting question, Rahul. But I think let me start by saying that if you want to understand what has happened at Galwan, you must go back to basic principles. And what has happened at Galwan on the basis of these basic principles is that the Chinese PLA has tried to move its ground positions up to what it considers its LAC. In other words, when it knows that there is a dispute with India, we do not agree with their perception and their interpretation of the LAC, they are still trying to unilaterally determine and define the LAC. Of course, the Indian army blocked them from doing so, and it eventually led to the death of scores of Indian and Chinese troops. And I repeat, there were deaths on both sides. What has happened in this process, Rahul, is that the intricate architecture of maintaining peace and tranquility in the India-China border areas, where both sides have differences of opinion on the boundary or the LAC, have been violated. The tenet of every agreement in 1993, 96, 2005, 2013 has been violated by the Chinese PLA. And therefore, I believe that India needs to take a reassessment of its China policy. And on the basis of this reassessment, which I hope is a whole of society, including opposition political parties, including experts from all fields, I hope this process will lead to a new recalibrated China policy.
You were ambassador when the Doklam crisis happened. Explain to our viewers how this is different from Doklam in terms of the promises the Chinese side made then, and how their actions at this moment are completely violative of every understanding the Chinese diplomats have had with the Indian diplomats, the Chinese military has had with the Indian military.
Rahul, you know, I had just left Bhutan and I was in Pakistan at the time of Doklam. But anyway, I followed it very closely. The fact of the matter is, Rahul, is that there have been umpteen agreements, as you and your viewers know, which have attempted to have an architecture which will maintain peace and tranquility in the disputed border areas of India and China. And by taking the measures and steps that they have done this time in the summer of 2020, the Chinese PLA, I'm afraid, has entirely violated all those agreements. And therefore, it is absolutely, we are at an inflection point in India-China relations, and India needs to reassess and recalibrate its policy towards China.
So why don't you explain that to us? So if you were asked to suggest the roadmap going forward for India-China relations, you're seeking recalibration and a reassessment. What should India's new China policy look like?
I have just a few ideas, Rahul, which I'll share with you and your viewers. But I hope that there will be other ideas from other people across India. And that is why I said that this should be a whole of society, a whole of India approach. For example, you know, I am not saying that we need to totally break our relations or bring a stop to our relations with China. No, not at all. It is important for us to continue to discuss with each other, talk with each other, but I think it cannot be business as usual. And one suggestion which I have and which I have made earlier and I'll make on your program is that India should reconsider whether Chinese firms can be permitted to undertake trials of 5G networks in India. And I think this is something which will hit China in the pocket. and therefore will be one of many steps that we can take.
Can we diplomatically, given all our other international treaty obligations, ban Chinese companies from putting in tenders for major Indian contracts? We know that there is one project which apparently is being funded by the ADB, and therefore there are some international obligations involved. We're now looking at whether we can revoke. It's the Chinese company that was the lowest tender, as they very often are. Can we just say the Chinese aren't welcome?
Look, Rahul, my approach would be that yes, this is an emotional moment, but we need to recalibrate our policy with a cool, cold, calculating, rational mind. And if it helps India in its growth and development to have a few Chinese companies here, so be it. So we need to take a look at this very coolly, calculatingly, and rationally. And therefore, I believe that the more minds that can be brought to focus on this question, the better our policy will be. But we need to have a long-term strategic approach to this new recalibrated policy towards China.
Those are important points you've made, Gautam Bambawale, for joining us with your thoughts. You've been ambassador in Bhutan, in China, in Pakistan, and understand the neighborhood like very few do. So those are very, very crucial insights, and I appreciate you taking out time to join us. When we come back from a very quick break, we'll have the Punjab Chief Minister, Captain Amrinder Singh. And remember, not just is he a senior Congress leader, he's a military veteran and far and away one of our top army historians. He'll be joining us exclusive on India Today to talk about the current situation between India and China. Stay back and watch that big conversation. As I promised you, we're working really hard on putting satellite maps together. I've seen those satellite images. They show a massive Chinese build-up, and what really makes these images very stark is you just go back in time, as we have over the years, going back to 2015 and then even further in time to 2010, you can see the manner in which they've scaled up. And why these are important for viewers to see is to realize and assess the kind of military build-up the Chinese have done on their side. If you just think that this is just a regular skirmish between the Indian and the Chinese armies, it's not. The Chinese are here. We'll show you the kind of fortifications and deployments they've done, military deployments they've done, when we come back on the other side of a very quick break, and we'll have Captain Amrinder Singh. So I do hope you'll stay back for that. Back in 5. Stay with us.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.